If you had asked someone in the early 2000s, which is the coolest, most innovative technology company in the world, the answer would undoubtedly have been Sony. But today, it's almost a ghost. So, what happened on the journey from that peak to this silence? Here's a story filled with internal wars, missed opportunities, and unexpected transformations. This isn't just the story of a company defeated by Apple. This is the tragedy of a giant that prepared its own demise. Sony, which invented the iPod 3 years before Apple, shelved it because of its own music company. The success of PlayStation slowly killed the rest of the company. And in the midst of all this chaos, you'll discover the surprising secret of how Sony survived by building a secret kingdom. If you're curious about the answer to the question, why isn't innovation enough on its own? This story is for you. The 1980s and 90s. The world revolved around Sony. The Walkman was not just a product, it was a cultural revolution. Trinitron televisions set the gold standard. PlayStation was poised to shake up the gaming world. Founder Akio Morita had the charisma of a rock star. They were so powerful that in 1989, they shocked Hollywood by acquiring Columbia Pictures. But here's the irony. The peak was also the beginning of the decline. Overconfidence began to slowly poison the company. The first crack would come from an unexpected place, the very heart of the company. The year was 1997. Steve Jobs hadn't even thought of the iPod yet, but Sony engineers in Tokyo had already developed the world's first portable, digital, hard disk music player. The prototype was ready. Codename Silverbird. This device could play MP3s and hold hundreds of songs. It was a technological marvel. All that was needed for it to hit the market was Sony Music's approval. That's where disaster struck. Sony Music was one of the world's largest music companies at the time. When executives saw this device, they were horrified. Why? Because it would allow people to copy their CDs and create a digital archive. The reaction of the CEO of the music division went down in history. We will not be our own pirates. At a secret meeting, the leaders of the music division made a historic threat to the managers of the electronics division. You will never release this device. Otherwise, we will cut off the license for our entire music catalog. Sony's right hand tied up its left hand. The Silverbird project was shelved deep in the archives. Date: 1998. 4 years later, in 2001, when Steve Jobs released the first iPod, there was an icy silence in the Sony boardroom. One of them whispered, This looks like our Silverbird." This was the first major victim of Sony's silo syndrome, and it wouldn't be the last. The early 2000s. The Walkman is collapsing under the digital revolution. Samsung was ruthlessly rising in the television market, but Sony had an ace up its sleeve, the PlayStation 2. It was so successful that it became the fastest-selling electronic device in history. It alone brought in 70% of the company's profits. It seemed like salvation, didn't it? You were wrong. The PlayStation's tremendous success blinded Sony's management. All resources, all talented engineers were transferred to this division. Other divisions, televisions, Walkmans, laptops, were left to starve. Here's an unprecedented internal conflict. In 2004, Sony's TV division wanted to develop a revolutionary processor for next-generation LCDs, but they had no budget. They asked the PlayStation team for help. The legendary leader Ken Kutaragi's response summed it all up. "We're not interested in your toys. We're changing the world." This internal war killed Sony's best ideas before they even had a chance to be born. While Samsung focused on a single goal and invested in it, Sony was fighting its own battles. April 2005, one of the most embarrassing moments in Sony's history. The expected profits are about to be announced, but at the last minute, a major error is discovered. The accounts are wrong. It is admitted that incorrect information was given to the stock market. The media dubbed it the Sony Shock. Shares plummeted by 25%. Reputation was destroyed. This scandal led to a historic first in Japanese business. Sony appointed its first non-Japanese CEO, British-American Howard Stringer. His task was impossible: dismantle toxic silos, end internal warfare, and unite the company. But Stringer was an outsider. He had to fight the powerful cliques in Tokyo. An unpublished detail from his personal diary. In 2006, at a meeting about the iPod, he gathered the heads of the music and electronics divisions and said, "Either you work together, or I'll fire both of you." The argument became so heated that one executive stormed out of the room in anger, contrary to Japanese tradition. Stringer couldn't implement reform. Because the problem wasn't technology, it was Sony's culture. Each division was fighting to protect its own little empire. During Stringer's tenure, Sony's stock lost 40% of its value. The 2010s were a series of disasters for Sony. The 2011 earthquake hit its critical factories. Just as it was recovering, one of the largest corporate hacks in history occurred in 2014. Hackers linked to North Korea took control of all Sony Pictures systems. Employee information, celebrity emails, and movie copies were leaked. The company's reputation was once again destroyed globally. There was no buzz in the market. Smartphones, Xperia, were mediocre. Televisions were losing money. The Walkman had become a nostalgic product. All hopes were pinned on the PlayStation 4 once again. And it succeeded. It saved the company from bankruptcy. But this was not a victory. It was a Trojan horse. Because it gave management the illusion that everything was fine. The reality was this. Sony was now just a gaming and sensor company. Everything else was dead. Here's perhaps the biggest truth you've never heard. Sony was never at a point where it could be said to have failed. It just transformed into a giant, hidden and invisible to you, the consumer. Sony's most valuable asset is no longer PlayStation. It's a technology with monopoly power that dominates more than half the world. Image sensors. Yes, the rear camera on the phone you're watching this video on is most likely using a Sony sensor. iPhone. Yes. Samsung. Yes. Google Pixel. Yes. Almost all premium phone manufacturers rely on Sony Semiconductor. This division alone accounts for nearly a third of the company's profits. So how did this happen? Here's the radical strategy. In the 2010s, while everyone was losing in the phone war, a group of visionaries at Sony thought, we can't win in the phone market, but every phone needs one thing, a better camera. So let's make the best sensor and even sell it to our competitors. This was completely contrary to Sony's traditional logic, but the cash generated by PlayStation enabled them to build this hidden empire. Today, Sony is a major player in semiconductors, professional film equipment, Hollywood cameras, financial services, and gaming. Its market value is over $100 billion. But here's the tragedy. Sony was once a beloved brand that entered everyone's home and defined culture. Today, it's an invisible supplier that's everywhere in our lives, but no one notices. The magical bond created by the Walkman is gone. What does Sony's story teach us? Innovation alone is never enough. Your greatest invention can be shelved by your own fears and conflicts of interest. Your greatest success can be your greatest weakness. A cash cow like PlayStation can drain all the company's other muscles. Internal war is more deadly than external war. If a competitor can't beat you, the war between your own divisions will. Surviving sometimes means redefining who you are. Sony survived by abandoning the consumer electronics it loved and transforming into an invisible B2B giant. Did Sony fail? No. But the once inspiring cultural phenomenon that was Sony? Yes, that's gone. The revolution started by pressing the play button on the Walkman seems to have quietly pressed the stop button. But remember, it still helps us see the world through its sensors in the background.